Hi, so I said that I was going to go ahead and do a video about when my son was born. He's now about 3.5 years old. So he was born on January 14th, 2012 at 11 minutes after midnight. So the way that the story goes is on a Wednesday night leading up to him being born, so a couple days before he was born, I thought I was going into labor because the nurses told me what to expect as far as the stomach tightening and then releasing and then tightening and releasing. And they said when it got about 5 minutes apart to go ahead and head towards the hospital, because at that time we were living about 2 hours away from this hospital. We decided to go ahead and switch to this hospital when I was about 32 weeks pregnant because the doctor I was seeing kept pushing for me to have a C-section. There was no medical need for me to have a C-section. He was pushing the issue because he was trying to say how convenient it would be for me to, have family present or to be able to pick his birth date, things like that that don't matter to me necessarily. I wanted a natural childbirth. So I ended up doing some research and I was totally sold on trying to have a water birth. So I did the research and I found a hospital that was about 2 hours away that does water births with certified nurse midwives. And there is an OBGYN that is on duty at the time. So if there is a medical necessary need for him or her to step in, they are there. And plus it's in a hospital, so if something were to go wrong, they have all the tools necessary to help the baby if he or she needed it. So when we decided to make the switch, we knew that once I did go into labor, we needed to make sure we got to the hospital, in a quicker manner than normal, because even though most labors, go for like 24 to 48 hours for at least all my friends that were giving birth at the time, that was normal. So, but we still knew we're 2 hours away, we need to get to the hospital. So we go ahead and head to the hospital and they start monitoring my contractions and they explain to me that it's not Braxton Hicks, it is early labor, but not enough for me to actually be admitted. So they go ahead and send me home. Well, I go ahead and head home and they go away. And then on that following Friday, so 2 days later, I end up having an appointment. It's supposed to be like my last appointment because at this point, I'm 7 days past my due date and I'm huge, I'm miserable, I'm not sleeping, I'm ready to have this baby. So we go to the appointment and the certified nurse midwife offers to do a membrane sweep. And a membrane sweep, from how it was explained to me and from what I understood when I did the research, was that you have to be so far dilated, and at that time, I believe I was about 3 centimeters dilated and about 80–90% effaced. So I was right on the cusp of going into labor. So what she did was you go in with your finger into the cervix and you sweep around the inside edge. And what that does is it releases, I believe it's a hormone that actually can induce labor. So it's a very natural way to induce labor. So she went ahead and did that, and she warned me. She's like, listen, she's like, I got you pretty good. She's like, I probably even dilated you even further. She's like, but because I got you good, you're probably going to be experiencing a lot of cramping later. She's like, it'll be normal. So just try and go home, get some rest. It's a holiday weekend. I'm pretty sure you're not going to make it through the weekend for your appointment on Monday. So she gives me some medicine to help me sleep because she is just sure I'm not going to make it the next 2 days. And she wanted me to be well rested in order to have this baby for when I did fully go into labor. So we go ahead and we go pick up the prescription. We head home, the whole 2-hour drive, and we get home around 2 p.m. And at this point, I'm already exhausted, not sleeping well. It's just I'm ready to get some sleep. So I go ahead and take the medicine and I go lay down. A little bit before 8 p.m., I'm tossing and turning, so I go ahead and get up, and my husband brings me a plate of food. And I basically missed dinner, so he's serving me dinner in bed. Awesome husband, I know. So he brings me this food, and I'm kind of picking at it, but I'm not really hungry. I didn't quite feel right. And then I start getting like a lot of lower back pain, and it felt like cramping, like period cramps, but in my lower back, and I'm like, oh, this is what she warned me about. Well, it just kept getting worse and worse. So finally around 9 p.m., I can't handle this anymore. And I asked my husband to go ahead and fill up the tub and let me get in the tub and, lukewarm water. Hopefully the water will help relieve my back pain. So I go ahead and get into the tub and I'm sitting there soaking for about half an hour and it's just not easing up. In fact, it's getting worse. So I go ahead and have my husband call the nurse hotline because at this point it's after hours. So I have him call the nurse hotline and the nurse is talking to me and she was so wonderful. She was talking to me and encouraging me, just asking me how my day had gone, just getting me to talk. And by the end of our conversation, about a half hour later, she's telling me, honey, I think you're in labor because every time you have one of your cramps, it lasts for a good minute and you can't talk through it because it's so painful. And she's like, and they're happening frequently enough that you need to go ahead and head in. So we go ahead, I get out of the tub, my husband gets me dressed, I throw on my PJs, and we head back to the hospital. So on the way to the hospital, it's 2 hours, okay? And the pain has gotten so ridiculously painful that I've got my hand on the bar here because I'm in the back seat. So I've got my hand on the bar here, I've got my hand on the headrest, bracing myself. I've got a leg up against the door jamb and then on the hump of the middle seat. And I've got my knees locked because it hurt so bad. And I start feeling the urge to push when we're still about 30 minutes away from the hospital. So I have my knees locked because I tried convincing my husband to watch some videos online with me on how to deliver a baby, just in case we had to deliver the baby in the car because of how far away we lived. Now, I really was expecting a long birth because all of my friends that had given birth recently were, like I said, the 24 to 48 hour crazy long births. So I was expecting the same. Well, that didn't happen, and I'll get to that. So he never watched any of these videos with me, so I'm like, I cannot have this baby in the car because we're not going to know what to do. So I have my knees locked. So we make it to the hospital about midnight. And because it was after hours, we couldn't go through the main entrance to the birthing center. So instead, they had told us about the side door entrance and shown us where it was, so in case we came after hours, we would know where to go. Well, we go ahead and park, and I remember looking at the clock when we parked in the car, and it was midnight. So my husband helps me out of the car, and every couple of feet, I'm having to squat and hold my stomach because these contractions are just hurting so bad. Well, I remember about 30 minutes from the hospital when I had the urge to push, I was thinking two things. First of all, I better be in labor. Second, if I get to the hospital and they tell me I'm only 5 centimeters dilated, there is no way I'm going to be able to do this all naturally like I wanted. So thankfully, we get to the door and they go ahead and buzz us in, and the lady comes and meets us at the door, and she tries to ask me what my name is. Well, I'm in so much pain. It's funny because the whole car ride there, I was doing this loud moan, groan kind of thing. At least that's what my husband was saying, because I wasn't paying attention to what I was doing. I was just focused on the pain. Well, once I got to the hospital, my husband said I was quiet. So I'm walking along, holding onto the railing, the wooden railing along the wall. And the lady's asking me my name, and she just thinks, I'm not that far into my labor because I'm so quiet. Well, my husband goes ahead and answers her for me and tells, who we are. And she's like, oh, we're expecting you. We have your room ready. So we go ahead and go into the room, and she tells me go ahead and to get undressed and put on the gown and onto the bed so they can start monitoring my contractions. Well, another contraction came, and I ended up leaning down on the bed like this and just bearing through the next contraction. And she puts her hand on my shoulder and she's like, okay, are you good? Right as it was kind of noticeable that it was ending. And I just look up at her and I barked at her, I need to poop. I don't know why I just blurted it out like that, but that's what I said to her because I had the urge to go number 2. So she goes ahead and kind of laughs and she's like, okay, honey, let's take you to the toilet so you can go number 2. So she takes me to the toilet, and at this point, the clothes are just coming off. All modesty is out the window at this point. I don't even care. I'm in so much pain. So at this point, I'm down to my sports bra and my socks. So I sit down on the toilet, and I start to push. I've got this small little bathroom, and I've got a hand on each side of the wall. For some reason, just bracing myself seemed to help with the pain. And she goes like that, and she runs out of the room, comes back with a flashlight of all things, and she leans down, and she looks, and she's like, oh my God, there's the head. So at that point, I see my husband's head pop around the side of the door from the main room into the bathroom, and he's like, because he sees it too. So next thing I know, the nurse runs out again, and in come a total of 4 or 5 nurses, and they're laying out what I call the little puppy pee pads, when you're potty training a puppy, the little pads you have them piddle on to training them. Well, they start laying those things out, and the nurses are putting on gloves, and I'm like, what are they doing is what I'm thinking, but I'm in so much pain I can't even talk. So they're like, all right, honey, are you ready to push? We're ready. And I'm just thinking, I'm not having my son on a toilet. So I go ahead and I'm able to, verbalize, I'm not having my son on the toilet. And she's like, okay, do you want us to help you back to the bed before he comes out? And I'm like, I want a water birth. And then that's where she kind of chuckles to herself. And she's like, honey, we don't even have time to fill the tub. So I'm like, well, get me off this toilet because I am not having my son on the toilet. So we go ahead and they help me to the bed. And out of instinct, and I don't know why, because every video that I watched and every idea that I had of having my son, it was the typical like laying on the bed and knees up in the air and pushing. Well, for some reason, I crawled up onto the bed, had my arms like wrapped around it, and I'm facing the wall. And my bum's in the air and my knees are on the bed, and I start pushing that way. And it felt natural, and it actually helped, like gravity helped him come out. And they were fine with it. They just let me do what I needed to do. They didn't make me breathe a certain way. They weren't telling me how long to push for and counting and all that like you see in some videos and some movies and stuff. They just let me do what I felt like I needed to do. So my husband's holding my hand up at the top of the bed, and this whole time, like during that pregnancy, he was saying how he was not going to watch the baby come out because he's like, I don't need to see all that. And I kind of don't blame him. But what was funny was as he's holding my hand, I keep feeling my hand like tug this way. And I realized that he's trying to look. So I go ahead and I'm like, go ahead and look. So he lets go and he starts watching. And from what I was told, because of course I'm not seeing this and I had no mirror, he's saying that most of the sac itself, and the nurse later confirmed exactly what had happened, most of the sac was already out. And all the amniotic fluid was like in the sac and hanging out of me. And for some reason, the water never broke. So, and at the base of, the entrance there, you could see the base of the top of my son's head. So she explained, she's like, honey, you can keep pushing, and it'll take a while because there's still fluid in there, is what she was saying, so it's going to be harder to push against. She's like, or I can go ahead and pop the water, and he'll be out in a couple of seconds. Well, I'd done some research and, of course, all the stuff that you come across. I'd actually found out that if a baby's born in the sac, in some cultures, they believe that that child is going to be someone special or someone great or a high figure or very knowledgeable. So I thought that would be kind of cool if that were to happen. Well, when the time actually came, I was ready for this kid to be out because of the pain that I was in. However, being able to push actually alleviated a lot of that pain. So we go ahead and I tell her, pop it. So I feel the gush of fluid, and then I hear it cry, and then another second later I feel the relief that he's actually coming out. So he actually was able to cry before he was even out, which is kind of strange. So they thought that was kind of crazy. So he ends up coming out. I flip over, trying to avoid, the cord and everything. So they end up laying him on me, and we were so surprised because he had red hair. We were really expecting a dark-haired child, like brown eyes. Instead, we ended up with a fair-skinned, blue-eyed, red-headed baby. So genetics played an interesting joke on us because we do have some redheads in the family. They're scattered, and they're not redheads anymore. Most of them, their hair turned darker, but it is possible, and we still get looks when we're in public, but it's okay because we know he's ours. But he was, he was 19 inches long, 7 pounds, 10 ounces, and very, very healthy. They let him nurse immediately, did a lot of skin-to-skin contact. That hospital believes in skin-to-skin and breastfeeding right away, so that's exactly what we did. I decided to delay cord clamping and cutting because some of the research that I had found was that there were studies done that by letting that last bit of fluid go from the amniotic sac the placenta into the baby had actually proven to prevent, I got a text, ended up preventing a lot of different types of cancer. So I figured, okay, we're not planning on doing the cord blood banking, so what's waiting a couple of minutes, for the cord to stop pulsating to do the cord clamping? What's the big deal about waiting a few minutes? So we went ahead and waited. And when it stopped pulsating, my husband cut the cord. And at this point, he's laying across me, he's nursing over here, and they've got a warm blanket over us, and I feel something really warm all over my right side. And I'm thinking, did he just pee on me? So I asked the nurse, I'm like, hey, I think he just peed on me. So she goes and she lifts up the blanket, and she's like, no, honey, he just took a giant crap on you. So, yeah, within minutes of knowing my son, he pooped on me. So, and it was bad. She said that he lost a good couple of ounces off of his actual weight with doing that, and that was before they weighed him. So he probably was bigger at birth, but they didn't take him away for almost 2 hours before they measured him and weighed him and did the eye solution and all the other stuff that they do. So He ended up being born 11 minutes after midnight. So from the time we were in the parking lot to about the time we got inside and he was born was roughly 10 minutes. So from start to finish, I had about a 4-hour labor. I know a lot of people are like, oh, you've had it easy. Debatable. I haven't had a long labor like some people have had, like 24 or 48 hours or anything crazy like that. But because I went so fast, I had no way to acclimate to that. It was very, very rough. But I did manage to do all natural, no pain meds. I didn't get my water birth. Maybe in the future I'll get one. But I wouldn't change really anything about my birthing experience with my son because it was the best experience of my life. I would totally do it over again, and it's the greatest thing being a mother. So for all of you out there that are like, I couldn't imagine giving birth, it's really not that bad. It is the worst pain you will ever experience, but it is totally, totally worth it. It is pain with a cause is what my midwife kept saying. You go through all that pain for a reason and you get a beautiful, beautiful reward. You may not get a trophy, for doing it all naturally, but in the end you have a beautiful, healthy baby, usually without all the side effects of an epidural, or it's just, I would not change a thing about my birth story. So for all of you out there that decided to take pain meds, there's nothing wrong with that. I chose to do my birth the way I did for me because I felt that was best for me and my family. So that's my experience, and I hope to make more videos in the future of some birthing experience because we are, like I mentioned in my intro video, we are expecting our second baby, and I plan to use the same hospital that my son was born at and hopefully get a water birth this time, so we'll see. But now we don't live 2 hours away, we're roughly about an hour away, so they did tell me, they were blown away, these midwives. They kept saying, no way is this your first baby, because they couldn't even tell I was that far into labor because of how calm, so they called it, that I was. So they said next time, if there was a next time, at that time they didn't know that I needed to head in as soon as I had my first contraction because of how fast I went. So curious to see how this birthing experience with my current pregnancy ends up being because of how fast I went with my son. It could have been because of the membrane sweep, however, I really do think it went fast because of how my body is. So I couldn't really, they say you can go off of your mother's experiences as far as pregnancies and births, can sometimes reflect what you can expect. Well, with my mom, I was born by emergency C-section, so I couldn't really go off of that. And then my little sister was born vaginally by induction because she was past her due date. So can't really go off of that either. And my brother, I want to say, my oldest brother, he was probably, I think, a faster birth. So I want to say my mom was at a music concert and she went into labor and barely made it to the hospital, if I remember the story right. So I guess you can kind of go off of what your mother experienced and judge what you may experience, but who knows. But that's my birth experience with my son, Angel, so I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you.